Brian, no one ever knows what to spec. I always say, like, I'm going to say what up, folks, and I kind of run through it. And I always get people to smile because they do not expect me to do it that way. Brian, welcome to the Mikey G podcast experience. I'm so excited to have you here. You've had a lot of people, by the way. You are one of the few guests that I have had on that has had a lot of chatter about how much of an amazing human being you are.
Really?
Yeah, man, people love you.
Oh, well. Okay. I'm not good with that. That's
Hey, listen,
yeah.
listen. I've already learned something, I'm gonna give you tons and tons of love and praise, and I'm just gonna make you feel a little uncomfortable. It's
Okay.
okay.
All right.
It's
Okay.
okay.
I
But
mean, I
welcome
do
to the
like it.
show,
It is
man.
nice. I'm just not. I don't know. I don't know what to do with it. It's like when people are singing "Happy Birthday" to you and you don't know where to look. It's that similar.
It's that feeling. It's that feeling. But
Yeah.
but I'm gonna have to lay it on you already as well. But dude, you look beautiful, and that shirt is fire, my man.
Oh,
Like you
thank
are
you.
looking good, brother. But
Thank you.
welcome to the show. How you doing,
Thanks.
dude?
Thanks for having me, man. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Having a good day. And then
Awesome.
I get to talk to you. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and this is, the other thing I didn't say to you too is like me and you as creators and entrepreneurs and families and everything. It's a beautiful hour and a half because we just get to reflect and be human together, and I just don't think people take enough time to do that. I
Hmm.
was literally having this conversation with my mom's visiting this morning, and even in excitement, right? Like we get so excited we want to rush things, and it's like we just
Yeah.
take a deep breath and have some meaningful conversations, and that's what's about to happen. So
Yeah.
before we get there, typical things that we do, a little bit update about the Mikey G experience. We are booked out, damn man, until the end of February. We've got a plethora of guests from all over tech and talent and AI safety and governance and storytelling today. Again, I've still made the transition from my crypto Twitter bros to really LinkedIn and just finding founders that have really interesting human stories like Brian will today. See, I told you, man, little man's gonna come
That's all
kind of
right.
hang out with here,
Do
little
I get a
golden
dog? I
doodle.
don't have one, but maybe should I? Would I help if I?
It adds to the campfire
All
vibe,
right.
right? Like
Okay. All right.
you just came into my living room,
All
man.
right. Just stretch for a couple of minutes while I go get a dog.
Right, exactly. And I say this too now. I mean, the ultimate dream is like, hey, Brian, heard you're an incredible guy. You've got great references. I'm going to pay plane ticket. You're coming to my campfire studio in San Diego. We're going to go out to a nice dinner. We're going to get to know each other, and then we're going to do the podcast the next day. That is my end goal. We're going to
All
get
right.
there
Okay.
eventually. We're just
All right.
quite not there. So
I
you
like
will
San
get it.
Diego. I've spent quite a bit of time in San Diego.
Yeah, you're going to get an invite next to my campfire studio here eventually. We're just doing it virtually right now.
Okay.
So, what else? Podcast booked out. Another podcast that I started, which Brian probably be cool to have you on too in the future. I have a buddy who I'm helping a startup with who's really kind of around the AI safety and governance side of like, what do these AI agents? How do you keep them in some type of guardrails? And it would be fascinating to talk about that and the impact of storytelling and brand, right? Because there's a lot of implications there for how these AI agents can just go off the rails and, like, literally overnight could destroy decades of work.
Right.
So it's just a really interesting, fascinating time, which is happening with all of this. IP is another huge thing, right?
Hmm.
So that is actually getting a ton of attention. I'm having a ton of fun with that. And we'll just leave it at there because the rest is about my man Brian. That is why we are here. Like I said, we had Mikey from Think Agents on, Jesse from Think Agents on, Johnny from Augmented Labs, who is now really just doing his incredible AI work. All of those you come highly recommended as a beautiful human being. Again, I won't make you blush again. That's the last time I'll say it. But to get there, we like to just do like a quick formal introduction
Hmm.
of where Brian comes from. And so, a little bit about him: started motion graphics as a teenager, really wanted to get into directing, filmmaking, but he actually got kind of his first success and start in the comic books. Um, Even though, like we said, we wanted to be a director. But this is really cool. He sold a short film to HBO called Whiteface that we'll talk about, which is very rare. HBO usually does not do that. but you're looking at a guy that accomplished that feat, which is a pretty big deal. And this is, I'm assuming this was when, this was a little bit before, right? So HBO was like the thing. Cause I remember how
HBO was
HBO
the
was
thing.
the thing there for a while.
Yeah.
It was big. So it was when HBO was the thing too, which is awesome. And this is always my favorite part. Little did you know that I just learned, Ryan is terrified of needles. Never heard of such a thing. Where does that where does that come from? Is this just a bad growing up stepping on a needle thing?
No, apparently I've done some research on it. Apparently it can run in families. So they think there may be a genetic component. Yeah, I had an aunt who was just as afraid. She died when I was very young. I don't remember her, but she acted from all accounts the same way that I do.
That's insane. So like if you were Indiana Jones, it would be a pit of needles, not snakes.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wild.
Which it could just be one. One's enough. One, one is plenty.
Or it could just be one.
Yeah, yeah.
That's fantastic. All right, man. Well, we are here. It's that quick. We are already at the reason why we're here, which is the Mikey G Podcast Experience. The one and famous question that I ask every guest. Brian, how did you get the seat you're sitting today? Please give me chapter 1, 2, and 3 to reiterate for the audience who has never heard this or will listen to this on the traditional platforms in the future. Chapter 1 or episode 1, I say kind of interchange them, is your childhood, man. Again, prompting questions here. Parents, parental figures, mantras, be kind, work hard, pay it forward. Were you a tinkerer? Did you play sports? You obviously wanted direct, so I'm assuming creativity was part of your life. Or just a really vivid memory, like something about a needle. I don't know, wherever you want to start.
Okay.
Chapter 2, schooling,
All
and
right.
then your professional career. And then you went off into creativity and entrepreneurship. Remember here, though, chapter 2, this is what we're really doing for humanity and all of the people that listen to this. It's the insights and the lessons learned, my man. That is what changes life, and these insights and the storytelling and all the things that we're going to talk about. Those are the big nuggets. So I like to get at least 3 really good insights from that part of your conversation. Obviously, we need a little chronological order there,
Sure.
but mainly what are those lessons learned? And then chapter 3 is about what you're working on now. I know you're cooking on your company. I know you're interested in technology and creativity. I think that's going to be a fascinating conversation as well. So we'll try to spend 20 minutes on each chapter. Start anywhere you want in chapter 1 in the childhood, brother. I cannot wait to hear it.
Okay. Let's see. So I can remember. So I spent a lot of time with my grandmother when I was very young.
Okay.
Really my great grandmother. So I remember spending a lot of time with her, and she would put me on my in my potty chair, and in front of the television, and I'm I remember being fascinated by things on the television. I was always fascinated with the moving image from the time
Yeah.
I can remember.
Mhm.
And so, but then that was in Missouri, and then for kindergarten and first grade, we had moved to Denver, Colorado. So my mom and dad, my brother, sister, and me, we moved to Colorado. I didn't really have a choice. I didn't. Nobody asked me, but we moved. And
Right.
what I remember was that movies were a big deal in our house. This is in the it's kindergarten. I started in 1970 kindergarten, so this
Okay.
was yeah. So late 60s and in the early 70s. What I remember was that movies were huge. Now there was no way to see a movie when you wanted to, right?
Right.
You couldn't see, you couldn't stream it, you couldn't, videotape. There was nothing. So you
Right.
just had to wait for things to come on television. And I remember, even though that sounds horrifying to people who are younger,
Right.
there was an excitement. King Kong was going to be on television. That's one I
Mm.
remember really vividly, that King Kong
Mhm.
was going to be on. It was going to like an event. Everybody's going to watch it on TV that night.
Right.
Everybody in the neighborhood was going to watch it. You had to plan around it. And that the same thing was true when The Wizard of Oz would come on. You had to sort of plan around it. It came on once a year, and you would plan around it. Uh, and so that was that excitement stuck with me. The
Mm.
excitement around movies, and also we lived. Um, not far from a drive-in movie theater.
Mm,
And so sometimes we would watch movies from our porch. Um,
pretty cool.
it was very cool, and it was there was a kind of magical quality
Yes.
there to that. And so my interest in film came early. Um, my mother told me she didn't know when it started. She's like, it was always there. And so, people think I chose this, and I didn't. I didn't make a decision to do any of the things.
Well, I'm already going to stop you there. And this is reflected because this is a fascinating, comes up a lot. Talk to me about this concept of not having a choice, and it almost seems, because how I'm interpreting what you say, tell me if I'm wrong, is it's kind of a part of you, right? Like
Hmm. Absolutely.
it was ingrained in you. Talk to me about that concept and if it felt that way, and does that help success or breed success? It's just an interesting concept to me because there's a lot of people that are in the camp of like, well, you can basically be great at anything and it's about the 10,000 hours and working hard. But where I see really magical things happen is this podcast is an example, right? Like I
Hmm.
think I have a knack for people and reading people and connecting to people. And I found an outlet, but it's always seemed a part of me. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's for me. It was a blessing and a curse all at the same time.
Ooh, talk to me about that.
Well, I can tell you that every I couldn't wait to be able to make movies. I couldn't wait. Like it was
Mm,
like the clock was running.
mm,
And I finally got to make a movie. I used to make flip books a lot, but because we didn't
right,
have the money for a movie camera. But
right.
when I finally was able to make a movie when I was 10, it was an animated movie called The War, which I think still exists. The guy who owned the camera still has that movie,
That's
and
awesome.
we used army men, and we did stop motion and everything, and it was like the greatest time of my life. I was 10 years old, and that was 1975, and I remember the overwhelming feeling I had at that moment was finally I'm getting to make a movie.
Right.
Finally, I was 10, right? But it had been all my life that I'd wanted to do it, and so every time when I wasn't doing it, it was almost like torture.
Right.
And when I later, we'll talk about this later, when I got to Hollywood and got so much opposition to
Yeah.
entering that business,
Right.
that was really hard. And even today, people are like, why don't you do something else? It's like, I can't explain what this is when you have a thing like this. And not a lot of people have it. And they can do other things and they can get interested in other things. I don't have that. I don't have it.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's ingrained. And so I know you can't explain why, but just that, like, if you were to at least start grappling with that of like, where does this inertia come from? Is it because you think of just the young exposure? Because you made a also really interesting point, which I think is actually lost in these younger generations, is movies were an event, right? Like this is
mhm.
back in the day, like like families would sit around the TV and it was a big deal. I mean, even me, right? Like my I'm not much younger than you, but like the Saturday morning cartoons was a big deal. TGI Friday, remember that, right?
Mhm.
These were events that like meant more than just watching TV, and that just seems to not exist anymore. Is
Yeah,
that
no,
part of that, or what are your thoughts?
yeah, yeah. I think that there is something about the event. There are events, but they're rare, right?
Mm,
As we do this, we just had the Super Bowl. That was an event, right? But they're rare, right? That everybody's going to be doing that thing that at that time or that day. They're not. I remember when people were first landing on the moon. That was an event, and everybody was there for it, right? Those things are rarer now. Um, Now it tends to be around some scandal, not some big event,
yeah,
right? And so,
but there's a scarcity aspect of that too,
yes, there
right?
is. There is, and
Interesting.
it adds value. Um, but for me, so that was part of it. I think there was some excitement there. I remember my dad loved the movie Planet of the Apes, which I also love, but
Yeah.
I hadn't seen it. And I remember my dad talking about it.
Hmm.
And the way he talked about that movie was like it was the most magical thing in the world. And
Right.
it's hard for people to look at that original Planet of the Apes and understand how groundbreaking it was and how groundbreaking the makeup was. And, but it blew everybody's mind. Yeah. Go ahead. You
No,
look like
I
you
was,
were.
I was gonna say, you just made an incredible point right there. Is your dad, and I'm assuming you at a young age, you have a deeper appreciation for things because you understand them. This is another thing that is very different about this day and age is things are so topical, deep knowledge and like deep understanding about how beautiful things are
Hmm.
because you understand the way they're made. Is there something there?
There wasn't then, but certainly I was always aware. A lot of people watch cartoons or watched whatever, and they became professionals later. But as a kid, they weren't thinking about the people
Of
making them.
course, of course, of course.
But I always was.
Mm,
I always was thinking about the people who made those things.
mm.
And I was always a much bigger fan of the people making the thing than of the thing.
That is very fascinating to me. And you're doing that from such a young age. And again, this is all just inherent. There's just a drive, a force inside of you, right? That you can't explain. That is so beautiful, man. Like this is already. We could stop now, and I'd be excited. I'd be very, very excited. Talk to me a little bit about. Keep on going. Go ahead.
No, I just was thinking about, I've been thinking about this lately. 'Cause my mom died a couple of years ago, and
Oh, I'm sorry, man.
no, thank you. But I remember as a kid, she was taking what a lot of people did back then, correspondence course, like a mail order and drawing. So my
Mm,
mom would be sitting and doing her homework and, draw this thing, and she would do it. And we would watch her do it. And later I realized that that was training for me. The idea that you could work at something, that you wouldn't just be good at it, you had to work at being good at it. And I think that sometimes people get an inheritance they don't think about. So if your parents have a particular, you know what I mean? They don't think,
yeah,
oh, I got that. I got that from my mother. Oh, so I guess you study stuff,
yeah.
right? So as early as I could, I started studying filmmaking and storytelling and how it worked because I thought that's what you did. So I
That is
got,
a beautiful insight. Your mom gave you a beautiful gift, man.
yeah, but I didn't even realize that until a couple of years ago that that was even a thing
Yeah,
that I got from her. But
yeah.
it made things seem normal, which is why when some people say, "Oh, I drew, but I didn't know you could make a living at it or whatever." I was always trying to figure out how to make a living at it. Like it wasn't, yeah, it was always, "Oh, you can do this for money? That's what I'll do then." I
Yeah.
didn't know how hard it would be.
And that yeah, right. Not only is it very difficult, but it brings up this notion that comes up time and time again, which is hard work, this inner desire and passion for something that you love, storytelling, being a director and movie making, and then just doing that consistently over a long period of time enables people like yourself to become really good at a craft. I does that make sense or am I missing anything there? Because that just seems like the basis of how do you become good at something?
Hmm.
Pretty much is described at that in my mind. Do you have anything to add there? Or?
No, it's funny. I saw a documentary years ago about people who are really good at things, and they talked about it was the first time I heard about the 10,000 hours. Later, Malcolm Gladwell wrote about it, and then
Right.
everybody thinks it's his thing, but
Yeah.
it pre-existed.
Right.
And I think that it's funny with storytelling because we live at a time when everybody has an opinion about things
Yes.
without the expertise about the thing.
Yes. Yes.
Right, and it's really strange. It's a strange thing. Like I have an opinion too. It's like, yeah, but, and I always think of it this way. Like people like you, they think that I have some arrogance when it comes to my ability to be a storyteller and to tell stories and to know how they work. But it isn't that. If I said to you, I played the violin every day for 8 hours since I was 4 years old, you would assume I was a good violinist,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Right. So it's weird when people go, "Well, you think that?" I'm like, "But I've always studied it, always."
Yeah.
Not, I learned it along with learning how to speak English. You know what I mean? I learned it. It's like a first language,
Yep. Yep.
and I can hear the accent of other people who are not native speakers.
That's wild, man. Yeah, and it's I just you're actually the first person that's been on this pod. Like there've been brilliant people on this podcast, right?
Sure.
But I have I don't think you're one of the first people that has but such a young age has just by osmosis kind of had this inner understanding of what you loved and then by default just worked at it your entire life.
Hmm.
That's beautiful, man. Uh,
It
tell
did
me
not feel that way.
exactly. So let's get into that, right? So,
Hmm.
tell me a little bit more about like anything that you can divulge, that you're willing to divulge more about, just kind of like the upbringing, kind of like the norms, things that you were taught. Was it working hard? Was it do good in school? Was it go get a job and make money? Like, what did that look like to you?
Oh, uh, well, none of that. My dad. Now, my parents divorced when I was 7.
Mm,
Um, but my dad was an unbelievable athlete, like an unbelievable athlete. Like when he died, um, and that was a weird thing because I had not seen him most of my life. Like I hadn't
mm,
seen. We'd spoken a little bit, but I hadn't seen him.
right.
Um, but when he died, I met a lot of people who knew him better than I did,
Yeah.
or differently maybe than I did, and every single person said he was the best athlete I ever saw. Like he was a legendary athlete. Like every person was like, "Oh, he was." And when he died in 2007,
Hmm.
um, 2007, 2008. When he died in 2008, um, a record that he set in the 50s in high school had just been broken. So,
Wow.
like some track thing, like
Yeah.
somebody told me at his service, it's like, oh, that record just got broken, like something he set in the 50s, like
A long time.
a long time. But my parents grew up in segregation in Missouri,
Ooh.
and so I'm literally first generation out of segregation,
Yeah.
because I was born in '65. The Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act are '64 and '65.
Yeah.
So I'm literally like right.
Right.
So my parents, I think their idea from being in a small town in St. Joseph, Missouri, and being in a segregated space,
Hmm.
um, didn't. I don't know if they thought very expansively about. Although my mom wanted to be a singer and that kind of thing, and my dad, I think, if he had lived at another time, would have certainly been a pro athlete.
Right.
Um, but they probably didn't have the scouts going to St. Joseph, Missouri to find a guy. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
100%.
they would have heard of him now. I think it would have been easy.
Yeah.
So I think that um, uh, I worked hard in school and I was good in school at first. Um, and around second grade, I started to. I didn't know I had dyslexia, so around second
Oh,
grade,
that's
school.
another thing.
Yeah, school became torture. Year after year after year, it was just more torturous.
Right.
But I was very enthusiastic about school and loved school, and I remember watching the big kids go to school, and I couldn't wait to go to school. It was there was not really any preschool when I was a
Right.
kid. My sister, who's a couple years younger than me, went to preschool, but my brother and I didn't. I don't think my brother went, and I didn't go to preschool. It was kindergarten, was essentially preschool.
Right.
And so I remember being old enough to watch big kids go to school and really want that. I really liked learning, still do.
Yeah.
I just hated school after a while, but not
And it was
learning.
more just because you said the dyslexia, and there's probably rigor around tests and stuff like that, and it, like, even though you were creative and passionate about things, you didn't get awarded for that, right?
Right. No, you don't get rewarded for that.
Which you should, by the way. That's
Yeah.
all a broken system.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's progress forward then too, and really kind of take me on this journey of how this innate, you're watching these movies, these are turning into events, this is going to be part of you. I'm assuming subject wise, you're really into arts, or maybe you're not. What does that look like? And let's like evolve kind of more into like middle school, high school, like your coming of age. What did that look like?
Well, I got really into animation.
Okay.
Um, and animation was not my first, although it's weird. Here's what's weird.
Okay.
The first movie I remember getting complete, there are a couple movies I got really obsessed with.
Okay.
One of them was a stop motion animation done by Ray Harryhausen, for people who know who he was, but I didn't know who he was. And it was a story of King Midas. And it was stop motion and it was creepy and compelling. And I remember being obsessed with how they did it and how, and I would have nightmares about it because it scared me, but I was obsessed with it. And, I didn't really know what animation was. I didn't know what was going on there. And then I saw Bedknobs and Broomsticks, an old Disney movie that
Oh,
where,
I know that one.
yeah, right, where live action and animation are blended. And so my interest in film always blended. Like, I didn't make a distinction between live action and animation because Bedknobs and Broomsticks, I think it came out in 1970. I think I was 5 years old when that movie came out. So I was like, it's like, oh, this is movies, right? There was
Yeah.
always at least an element of spectacle because I finally did see Planet of the Apes
Right.
and King Kong, like I said, that's animation and live action, right? So all those things blended together. And so I would say that and because we didn't, when my parents got divorced, we didn't have a lot of money. Mom didn't, and I couldn't make movies. We didn't have a camera and all of that, and so she worked in offices, and she would bring home pads of paper that I would make flip books
Yeah.
on. I saw an episode of Mister Rogers where he showed you how to make flip books, and I was like, "Oh my god!" And I became obsessed. And I did. I must have done a couple flip books a day at least for years.
Hmm.
And then, yeah, and so, which actually taught me a lot
Yeah. Talk to me
about,
a little bit about that.
well, you learn what a frame does.
Ooh.
You learn what a frame does. And so it's like, oh, so movies made sense to me at the sort of cellular level.
Right. And you learn what a frame does in the sense of composition, emotion it conveys, what can go in it. Talk to me a little more detail about what a frame does.
Well, a frame has more power than people realize. Chuck Jones, the great animation director who directed The Grinch and all the
Hmm.
Roadrunners and all of that, he would say the difference between a laugh and not getting a laugh is sometimes one frame. So even though it's 1/24th of a second or 1/30th of a second, depending on it
Right.
it that know what you can get away with, and you know what you can't get away with, and you know how you can push a frame. It's just interesting to know on a cellular level, and in fact, when I got to work professionally in film as a teenager and in my early 20s, we still worked on solid pieces of film, like
Right.
strips of film. And
Right.
so the frame was important there. You'd hold the film up to the light and look at the frames. And so you had a different relationship to a frame. Now I think everything's about motion in a different way. So
Interesting.
everybody has
Yeah.
experienced it in motion. And for me, it was a succession of still frames.
Yeah.
Um,
Could
it
you
was a different
do
way of
you
thinking about it.
Do you think it, or do you think you could argue it helps you understand just like the fundamental concepts of storytelling as well too? Framing does it have that much of an impact, or is it more of understanding animation and
I
motion?
think it can. I think it can have that much of an impact. Um, because you're using those frames to tell a story. So yes, yeah, I've heard this. I've had a lot of friends who have worked with George Lucas over the years, and my mentor ended up running the animation department at ILM for a while,
Mhm.
and everybody said this about George. I've never met him. I don't know why I'm calling him George, but people I know, I've been in the same room with him once, but I've never met him.
Good
It,
old George. I've never
yeah,
met him, but I'm gonna
yeah,
call him George.
George. But everybody said he could look at something. He was an editor. He started as an editor. So he
Hmm.
could look at something being projected and he would say, that shot is 8 frames too long or whatever. And he'd be right every time. They'd say he'd be right to the frame, just looking at it in real time.
That's crazy, man.
Yeah.
And but that's this goes back to like there. I think greatness. This brings up the big question of greatness. There's a difference between being good and great, right?
Hmm.
And that is the type of stuff it takes, right? That just you have studied this much stuff so much that you can literally rip that off the top of your head.
Hmm.
That makes sense?
Yeah. It's the weird thing about I think good and great is it's actually small. A
Oh,
small gap.
tell me about that.
It's it's um it's the difference. It's a weird thing. It's hard to get to close that gap, but it's a small one. Meaning you can be proficient and you can be good and you can do all the things, but there's one little thing that you do that other people don't do as well or haven't thought about or don't notice. And it's always that little piece, that little polish, that little thing, right? Because 8 frames, 8 frames seems like it won't make a big difference, right? But the person who doesn't know that that shot is 8 frames too long isn't telling as good a story, isn't moving people in the same way, doesn't get to become George Lucas,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Right? They were 8 frames away from being George Lucas, right? Right.
Yeah. Along these lines, then, though, do you think a majority of that time that greatness comes from this this it factor to going from good to great? There is an it factor. I agree with you, and sometimes it is an it factor that you just can't quite put your finger on, or is it just timing and luck as well? Like what is it more? Do you how do you make sense of that?
I think it comes down to a couple of things. One of them is, here's what I've noticed about, I've worked with a lot of illustrators and well, lots of people, lots of craftspeople. There are people who get good enough
Mm,
to work, and then they think their work is done, right? And then there are the people who are perpetual students, and they never think their work is done. And those are the people who are great.
yes, I agree. Totally agree with that. I also agree that timing and luck helps a lot, but I think we're both on aligning to the just. I say this a lot on. It's just a firm belief of mine. The day you stop learning is kind of the day you start dying. Then
Hmm.
I mean, what else is there to do, right?
Yeah, there's nothing. You're stagnant, right? Stagnant water is bad. It's dead, right? You're
Yeah,
stagnant.
yeah,
So you have to keep moving. And so um, everybody I've ever known who is great, and I've been lucky to know people who are great at what they do, they're just constant students.
yeah.
And the people I knew have known who are good aren't. They just
I,
aren't. They're like, I'm done. I know how to do that now. And they're
yeah.
done.
They want to get proficient, and it kind of stops there, and they're
Yeah.
like, oh, "We're going to move on." Oh,
Yeah.
beautiful conversation.
It's about making a living.
Oh, there we go.
Right? So if you tie it to making a living, and then you're making a living, then you don't see any reason to get better.
Yeah. Dude, you just made me have this crazy jump and gap to make me realize so I went to design school, right?
Hmm.
and I already always kind of self-defeated I'd never be a great designer because I didn't have that it. If I
Mm-hmm.
look back at it, I just was never that passionate. I never wanted to be great at it. It was a way that I thought was an interesting way to make money, and I left it at that.
Right.
That totally relates to exactly what you just said.
Yeah. Also, I think that there's another thing. I talk about it about me not being able to play the guitar. I can't play the guitar. I can't play the guitar. I want to, but I don't want to learn how to play the guitar.
Exactly.
And because I tried when I was younger, and what I was doing didn't sound like music, and I was like, it was just frustrating. And what I realized is that if you want to do something, you do have to love it enough to be bad at it.
Ooh,
Right. Because you
yeah.
don't care. You don't care. Okay, whatever. I'll just get, you just keep doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it because you love it that much. But you have to love it enough to be bad at it. And people think, look, you might have some talent. Who knows? You might have some talent about something.
Yeah.
But talent is completely overrated. I don't even like it as a word, really. Talent, you might have some instant proficiency, but that doesn't take you that far, right? And
Correct.
and the passion will take you much further.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is something that comes up time and time again because there are actually a lot of people that come on the show and say like, the pursuit of building something and not having all 100% passion still can get you through and you can create incredible things. And I'm just like, really incredible things? I don't know incredible will ever get you there. I don't think you can ever get to incredible and make really massive impacts without passion because it's just inevitably like there's such a small amount of time where you can look around and you're like, damn man, life is really good. Like
Hmm.
everything is firing on all cylinders, and
Right.
then 24 hours later, you're getting punched right in the face, man.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that passion brings you through that, right?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I don't. I suppose there are people. Again, they can be good. They can be proficient. But I think it's very hard to be great unless you have some passion. And the passion doesn't necessarily have to be about the thing itself, right? So if you have a passion for learning, like Frank Oz is a guy that I know, and
Uh-huh.
Frank, for people who don't know who Frank is he was Miss Piggy. He was Yoda. He's Bert and Ernie and Bert. He started all those things, but he's also a director. Directed Little Shop of Horrors and Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and I don't get the impression from Frank that he was passionate about being a puppeteer.
Mm.
I don't get that impression. Um, his parents were puppeteers, um, and he was around it a lot, and he did it. But I don't ever know if he was passionate about it. But he is passionate about learning. I've seen
Mm.
that, and he is passionate about finding a way to get it right. He worked very hard. I asked him about like how many famous puppeteers are there? Like three?
Right. Right.
Right? There's a lot of puppeteers, right? And even on Sesame Street and the Muppet Show and those shows that he worked, there's other puppeteers, right? But other than Jim Henson, most people are hard pressed to name those other puppeteers, and they're fine and they're good, right? They might even be great puppeteers, but there's something different about, like, if you look at Frank's stuff, if you look at Fozzie Bear, and you look at Miss Piggy, and you look at Yoda, his stuff is alive in a very specific way.
Right.
I can imagine Miss Piggy living a life where she's not on camera, right?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I can
Right.
imagine her doing other things, right?
Mhm.
And it's because he took his job seriously as an actor and performer and getting it right in a very specific way. He has very specific things that he focuses on when he does that work. Um, to you know, um, I like the way he talked about creating Bert, the character of Bert,
Right.
and he's like, he goes, okay, so this is your puppet, and he goes, Bert was a terrible puppet. He said Ernie was a great puppet. He's like, Jim had the great puppet because Ernie had this great color, and he had two hands, and he goes, that was a great puppet. He goes, Bert just had like, his hands didn't really move, they weren't articulated, and they had little sticks, and he was this dull yellow color, and he couldn't make him interesting. He didn't. He's like, I can't make this interesting. This is a terrible puppet. He hated
Right.
it, and he decided to lean into who Bert was.
Mhm.
Well, he's boring, so I'm going to make the most boring character I can.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that his personality comes out of that. It was he looked at the limitations of that puppet and said, "How can I embrace those limitations?"
It's beautiful insight, man. I love. We're gonna have to coin this. This is totally gonna become a short of some form of fashion, which is uh, you you can be to be great at something. You have to be passionate, but yet you don't have to be a passionate about that actual thing. You just have to be passionate about something that relates to that thing.
Right. Some
That's
aspect of it.
amazing. That's
Yeah.
a beautiful insight.
Yeah. So yeah, some aspect of the thing.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. You
Be
know.
passionate about an aspect of the thing. Yeah, I
Right.
love that, man. That's such a cool. So back to you. So
Hmm.
you're getting passionate, right?
Right.
About framing and you're animating. Take me kind of through high school and you're starting to think about, hey man, I got to go into this big, scary, beautiful, bold world. Mainly scary at that point for most people. Uh, just take me through a little bit of the chronological order there and how your mind is evolving.
Well, high school was so what people call middle school now, junior high.
Hmm.
Um, when I was in junior high, I actually got to take a film class, which I
Mm,
didn't think I'd be able to do because my grades were bad. But they did let me in that class, and I had a great time at that. Like I was good at it. I won my first filmmaking award. It was an audience award, which is my favorite award to get. Is an audience award.
absolutely.
And so I got that. We showed all the films to the school, and they voted, and I won this audience award. Um, I was seventh grade. Yeah, and I loved it. And I loved going to school. I didn't usually like going to school, but I'm like, I get to do this film thing. But that was sort of the last time I got to do anything like that. And high school was not fun at all
Yeah.
for me. I was the dyslexia was kicking in hard,
Yeah.
but also I was bused. And that doesn't mean I took the bus. This is busing. So this is forced busing, meaning we don't have enough black kids in this part of town, so you have to go to this part of town, right, across town.
That's
And so
crazy,
that's
man.
that's what they did. And they didn't the people didn't want us there. So, it was like an old civil rights like nobody wanted us to be there. And so
Where was this? Where are we at this point?
this is in Seattle. So
Okay, this is in Seattle.
Seattle. So yeah. So I was bused to another part of town, and some people had a different experience with busing, and it's not like I didn't have friends and stuff, but it was terrible. I had a terrible time,
Yeah.
and I think that the teachers, well, I know some of the teachers definitely were um, in the camp of not wanting us there.
Right.
So you take that plus having dyslexia,
Man.
if people don't think you're very bright because you have dyslexia and you can't spell or whatever,
Right.
and they have whatever biases they have because of what you look like,
Yep.
they stop teaching you.
I'm so sorry, man. I mean, it just makes no sense to me why humans act the way they do, brother.
Yeah,
I mean, it
yeah.
just makes no
And
sense.
yeah, I couldn't wait. I couldn't wait to get out of there.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah. But should you just talk to me real quick about the like reflecting back, you've done beautiful things with your life and your career, right? and not so much on just the dyslexia and then obviously what it was like to be bused and stuff, but more from like your own personal perspective of like that adversity. Do you think there's something to be said about grit or being able to make you withstand through just bullshit, or was it just that was it just something shitty you had to deal with? Like, I'm interested in unpacking that a little bit if you
I,
are.
I had a couple of things that were helpful. One is I knew what I wanted to do. I knew it.
Ooh.
I always knew it. And that kind of focus was really helpful to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a thing with dyslexia, which I didn't know until later. I didn't even know I had dyslexia. I actually thought I wasn't smart.
Right.
But I would read constantly about films and filmmaking, constantly.
Yeah.
What's interesting about that is that it was very hard to read other things. But apparently, this is a thing about dyslexia. If you're interested in it, you can read all day long. If you're
Interesting.
not interested in it, it's a whole different task.
Right.
And so I just read all the time about movies and stuff, like all the time.
Yeah.
So it was a kind of safe space for me. And also, it was a place where I didn't feel stupid.
That's super interesting.
Yeah.
Really insightful.
Yeah. And so then another thing that was really unbelievably helpful was that I had a friend who was very interested in animation. This was in eighth grade. And I think, yeah, it was in eighth grade. And he was very interested in animation. And I had looked up, and he was a better artist than me. He could really draw, this guy.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, this guy could be working. He's amazing. With your eighth grade eyes, it
Yeah.
looked professional to me,
Right.
right? And I had looked up um, motion pictures, um, places that did motion pictures in Seattle.
Yeah.
I was flipping through the phone book. If you don't know what a phone book is, Google it. But I was looking through the phone book, and um, I saw motion pictures as a listing, and I didn't even know anybody in Seattle did anything with movies. And I was like, "What?" So I called everyone, and I said, "Can I come see what you do?" And I was a kid, so people were like, "Yeah, sure, a kid wants to come see what we do." So everybody let me come visit, and then there was one guy who did animation, motion graphics, and I said to my friend, "Hey, you should come. Maybe there's a job for you, a summer job or something this guy can give you." So we went, and the guy really took a shine to me. He really took a liking to me, the way I talked about film and all of that. And he goes, like, "I don't have a job for your friend, but if you want to come back anytime, come on back." And that guy became my mentor, who later went on to, and I worked for him for 6 years. And he later went to Lucasfilm and ran the animation department, and
Yeah.
then the matte painting department. In fact, created the digital matte painting. One of the
So
two
cool.
people that created it. He was like one of the first 5 people to use Photoshop.
That's wild,
Yeah,
man.
yeah,
Like you
yeah,
said,
yeah,
we're in the Photoshop era of AI creativity. Like, if you can learn these tools as quick as these people can, you're like, that's the moment in time we're living in right now.
yeah.
Question though, you met this mentor because of your own drive and ambition of opening up that phone book, right? Is that what
Right.
I heard right?
Yes, yes.
I'm really interested in your response here on this one. Is for somebody in that age range that feels like they don't have the support, that is being called dumb, or
Mhm.
feels like they don't have, like, what is your advice to that person? Because I don't have a clean answer for that.
I don't have a clean answer, but I'll tell you where I was going with that is this. It was my after school job. So I would go after school. He'd say, "Come hang out." So I'd go after school and sort of help him with commercials and stuff. Like he was doing a lot of commercials.
Right.
And then he called me one day because he wasn't paying me. I was just hanging out, learning things. And he said, "Hey, how would you mind, working for me?" So it was my first job,
Mm-hmm.
any kind of a job,
Mm-hmm.
other than mowing lawns and stuff. That
Right.
was and so he gave me my first job, And so the cool thing for me was that I could feel like an idiot at school, but go to this job. And
Yes.
right where this guy thought I had value. We're still friends today. But he thought I had value, and in fact, he would be like trying to come up with ideas for like for the power company or something, and like I'm bidding on this thing and I have to pitch some ideas or whatever. And he was great about like I would pitch him an idea and he didn't lie to me. He never lied to me. So he'd say, "No, I don't think so. That won't work." But if it was good and he liked it, he would say he liked it and he would pitch it along with his other stuff. And when people would say, "I like that," he'd say, "Oh, that was Brian's idea." I was a kid. He didn't have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that made me know that I had some skill, that I, outside of school, I had value.
Yeah, it is another angle that, me hearing what you're saying is, and I think for, I'm just going to touch on the advice to that person, which is surround yourself with people that see your value, true value though, not value just to say you're valuable, right?
Right.
Like as you said, but like value who you are as a human being. But
Yep.
then there's also this sense of support is kind
Yes.
of how I was interpreting it. Is you
Yes.
have to, and I say this, I say this all the time. I went through a crazy mental health crisis, right?
Mm-hmm.
The other than modern medicine, the number one thing that got me through was friends and family and support. That was it.
Yep.
They're
Yep.
just it's so critical to find that. And if you don't have that, start seeking it out, right?
Yeah. Seek it out. And I would say it's probably easier now to find a group, to find that support.
That is the benefit of the internet with all the
Yeah.
horrible things that it does bring, right?
Yeah.
But it does open up that flexibility. So because there's just so many people in this world, there's no way you're eventually not gonna find somebody that supports you and
Yep.
understands you
Exactly.
and gets you. And
Yeah.
that is critically important.
Yeah. Also, you cannot forget, and this has been really helpful to me. It's not always fun.
Mm.
That resistance builds muscle. That's how you build muscle,
Yes.
right? That's how it works, right? And so, if you're passionate enough, somebody telling you no is fuel. Oh, I'll show you. That's
100%.
fuel. You can use that, right? What's interesting is that I've known people who see good work and their response is, "Oh, I could never do that." But I always saw good work and said, "Oh, that's possible." And so you can use anything as fuel.
Mm.
You can use somebody's doubt about you as fuel. You can use other people's good work as fuel. You it's around.
Yeah.
You just have to learn how to use it as fuel.
Yeah.
And yeah,
So what I'm hearing you say is the other way to say that too is just how you interpret the good and the bad. And if you
yeah,
can interpret it as an opportunity opposed to a woe is me, that mindset, and there's tons of studies out there, right, that say this repeatedly ad nauseum, that your mindset absolutely is a drastic uh, contributing factor to the outcome, right?
yeah. I think that's true. I think that can be. It's one of those things that I think is difficult to fake. So the
Mhm.
problem is because there's plenty of things when I don't have that mindset. I wish I had it about everything, but I don't.
Of course.
And I can try to make myself have it, and I don't have it. And maybe that's where the passion part comes in, right? Where if I love something enough to be bad at it, then it doesn't matter if somebody says you suck at that, right? That doesn't matter. And I can use that as my part of my passion. You know what? I'll show you. I'll get good at this.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Um,
This is this has
yeah.
been we're 55 minutes in, believe it or not. And
Uh,
I feel like we have so much to talk about. Uh it's so many beautiful insights, and what I always say on the show too, I pretty much say this every episode, is what is cool, which you've done is we've talked about very similar universal concepts, but you've just given like slight nuance to things. Like be passionate about something tangential, like the puppeteer conversation. That's
Hmm.
phenomenal. It's just a different angle. And that different angle might really click for somebody when they listen to this. And that's
Hmm.
all we've done. We've already done our job here, but we got so much more to go, man. What I want to do though is start progressing more towards this chapter two. And then so you have your mentor and take us through, is that, does that just turn into full-time job? Is there film school? Is there what do you start doing on this transition phase as you're realizing like, oh dude, I can hang around this guy. I got a mentor. I am learning things. What's next?
Well, it's interesting. Film school is an interesting thing. I did not go to film school. I took exactly one film class
Hmm.
um, at a community college, but by an actual like big time director who moved to the Seattle area to sort of retire
Yeah.
and taught at a community college. Um, and so, but my grades were too crappy to think about going to school.
Yeah.
Um, um, I also I this is the thing about going to the school I went to. You got to remember, my mom grew up in Jim Crow,
Right.
Missouri, in segregation. So her teachers didn't expect her to do much or go anywhere or do anything. And so my mother was not pushing me to go to school or any, not in a bad way. She just, she had a limited, you know,
Right. Limited
you know,
view of what was
yeah,
possible.
you know, um, but also because I think the school I was going to was not invested in me as a person, nobody ever talked to me about college.
Right.
No adult ever said anything to me about college when I was
Right.
in school.
Right.
Right, right.
Right.
Um, they just didn't. So I didn't really think about it. Also, one of my very best friends, his parents had college yearbooks and stuff, and I didn't know how any of that worked. I knew college was a lot of money, and we didn't have a lot of money.
Right.
I knew I didn't have the grades, but also looking through their old yearbooks, I didn't see anybody who looked like me. So I thought those
Right.
were white spaces. I thought I was not welcome in those spaces. Now, if
Right.
I'd grown up on the East Coast or something, there was, black universities and stuff. I didn't know anything about that stuff.
Yep.
Um, people on this side of the country, I think, started to learn about those schools later with the Cosby Show and the other show, the spinoff, A Different World. But that's just a little behind me, just a little bit
Mm,
behind me.
right.
So
Right.
so it's like, oh, well, it would have been nice to know that
Right.
that
Yeah.
existed.
That was a possibility.
Yeah, and so, but what I was able to do was um, continue doing what I was doing. I had a job, so I continued doing my job. And then when he got hired away to ILM, I the cool thing is I got to go visit ILM a lot back then.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that was cool. But so I they were working when I he started working there. They were doing Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, Star Trek 3, Cocoon, Enemy Mine, Young Sherlock, and I would go and they'd be working on that stuff. And I
Yeah,
got
just a couple small
yeah,
non-icon
yeah, yeah,
things.
yeah, and it was cool to be able to see. But I knew a lot of the film people because I'd worked for Bruce, my mentor, for so long that I knew a lot of film people around town. So I could pick up work from them. And when they couldn't pay me, I worked for them for free. It became my school. Um, in fact, I remember I worked at this animation house, and I knew the two people who ran it from when they used to do work with Bruce. And I worked at this one animation house where my job was to listen to the soundtrack and mark how long a syllable was, how many frames a syllable, like, oh, that goes from here to here, so they could animate to it. And so I would make these sheets that would tell them how. And what was great about that was, again, getting to know the smallest components
Yes.
of how a movie went together,
This
right?
is a theme.
Yeah,
Understanding the building blocks at the cellular level. You've
yeah,
said a couple
yeah,
times.
yeah. And so I did that, and then I got a call from the big animation house in town, and they said, "Hey, we can't pay you, but we'd like some help. Can you come do that?" And I said, "Sure." So I went over there and worked for them, um, and that was really my school. I was still living at home. I treated it like it was my school. I went there every day, and I worked for free and did whatever, and didn't miss any. It was my job,
Is
even
there
though,
is
you know,
there irony in there that actually the schooling you got anyways was better than if you would have gone to the college film school route, right? Or
Um,
what are your thoughts on that?
in some ways, I think in some ways I do think it was better because it was all practical stuff, right? So there used to be a library where you could check out films, and these were films that were projected with a projector, not
Yeah.
videos or right. And we would go get these films, and I remember we would study them for color. We'd watch them a frame at a time, and it was all practical because we had a commercial that had to be on the air, or so it was different than theory, right?
Right.
Because it had to work, right? Right?
Ooh, yeah.
And so I think in some ways that was good. Also, the interesting thing about film school, and I just said this on some podcast, and I know I'm going to get some pushback, but actually, I'm not a big fan of film school. And I'm not saying that some people don't get a good education there or get things that they need there. I'm not saying that. But I'm not a big fan of it. First of all, I can't tell you how many people I know who've been to film school where I teach them things and I think, how can I be teaching? I had to learn this on my own. They didn't teach you this in school.
Right.
There's movies that they haven't seen because they aren't some obscure Russian movie. It's like, but you've never seen It's a Wonderful Life because that's a really good movie. Like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so it's really weird. Also, when I think about the history of film, first of all, film school is relatively new,
Mm.
right? Lucas and Spielberg and those guys are really the first generation of film, even though Spielberg didn't go to film school, but they're the first generation sort of a film school people. Coppola, those guys. They before that, Hitchcock, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, John Ford, Billy Wilder, Howard Hawks. None of those people went to film school. Film school didn't exist. None of those people went to film school, right? So it's like, well, wait a minute. They did masterpieces and didn't go to school. And in fact, I think films have gotten worse since film schools.
Probably. And I think it's maybe not, film school, we could debate about that. I think it's industry, right? Too, right? Like it's how much money can we make?
That's
But via
part.
film could be part of it. But
Part
the
of it. It's part of it. So I think it's
technology has really impacted creativity. Schooling has impacted creativity for sure.
Paul Thomas Anderson. I think it was him who said this. He went to film school, and he said the professor, it might have been NYU, said, "Hey, we teach real cinema here. We want to do real cinema here, and if you want to make Terminator 2, you're in the wrong class." And he just thought, maybe there's somebody here who wants to make Terminator 2. Terminator 2 is a pretty good movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a weird, you know what I mean? Like, and then he was supposed to write a scene. I'm sure it was Paul Thomas Anderson, but I might be wrong about who. But it was somebody like that. And he had to write a scene in film school, and it was like, I think it had to be visual or something. And he copied a David Mamet thing. David Mamet's a very good visual writer. And he copied the David Mamet thing, and he got a poor grade on it. And he was like, "Oh, this is lame," and he left because it was like, "Oh, they don't know what they're talking about." And so
Mhm.
when I deal with people like at film schools, professors at film schools, there's a bunch of stuff they don't know,
Mhm.
and they pretend to know things, but you can trip them up pretty easily when you say, "But Paddy Chayefsky said this," and they're like, "I don't know who that is, or that's old, or whatever," and uh, yeah, no, I, I, I don't think it's. I just don't. I'm not saying that people don't get things out of it. Certainly, when I would have gone, what people got mostly was they got to touch the equipment, which I never got to do. They got to
Mm,
learn more hands-on skills. I got to in my wheelhouse. I had a little bit of some experience, but I didn't get to do everything. So I didn't get like, oh, we learned how to shoot with this camera. We learned how to edit. You doing this? We learned how to a friend of mine went to film school where they would edit old television shows and learn how to edit that way. And I never got to do those kinds of things.
yeah.
And so I think the practical stuff, for sure, and maybe being exposed to stuff that's not pop stuff, but I think often they exclude pop stuff, and there's stuff there,
Yeah.
right?
And so your schooling then, like the McDonald's school of thought, give me an insight or two there about what you thought was really impactful through this time as we kind of progress through your career.
Can you reframe that question? I'm not sure.
So we're talking about how film school cannot be that impactful, and there's things that might be missed. You kind of
Right.
went to a different school of thought, which was
Mhm.
go to school by doing, right?
Right.
During this time, one or two insights that really profoundly impacted you that you think's really started helping you
Mm.
progress as a creative, as a doer, as a director, as a comic artist.
Uh, Boy, that's a difficult question. I can say that it was really nice to be around people who it was their living,
Mm,
and to hear them talk about things in very practical terms.
yeah.
And I remember, and also the stuff I wasn't smart about that I got smart about later is also interesting.
Tell me a little bit more about that. That's interesting.
Well, the last sort of place I worked at in this sort of motion graphic space, there was a video department.
Yeah.
This was in the early 80s. So the video department was sort of the, ugly stepchild of the, like, oh, whatever, the video. That's not real film.
Right.
And, and I would go hang out with those guys, though, sometimes. And I remember this guy. Now, at that time, video didn't look very good. It had this weird, that it was cold. It was so cold compared to film, which is much warmer, and it just made everything look kind of fake somehow. And
Yeah.
and I remember this guy who was a video editor saying to me, "Digital's going to take over."
Ooh.
And this was in the early 80s. And I was like, and I just looking at it and I was like, how is that even possible? How is that even possible? He's like, watch, they'll be shooting movies on this. Like he was and this was early for him to be saying that. And there was no evidence to support his
No
claim.
evidence whatsoever. When did digital? Okay, so the time frame though. When did digital truly take over? I don't know from a tech perspective. Like when can you say it truly was a majority of what happened?
Oh, it was relatively it was fast, but it was gentle. So if that makes any sense.
Yeah, no, that
So
makes sense.
going back to George Lucas, he started with Edit Droid. I don't know if you know Edit Droid, but Edit Droid was the first non-linear editing system.
Yeah,
So before then, people physically, cut and pasted film together.
yeah,
And he's like, you could do this all digitally. And so I think the rise of home computers and people getting, all that stuff and people getting used to digital in general. I grew up in an analog world for the most
yeah,
part,
yeah.
right? And when I was doing motion graphics with Bruce Walters, it was all analog. There was no computer involved. There was no, none of that existed really. A little bit if you were way high end, you could,
Yeah.
but a lot of it was just stuff people have been doing for 70 years at that point, and it hadn't really changed very much. And so Edit Droid was one of the things. I remember Bruce telling me the matte paintings used to be done They used to be called glass mat paintings, and you would paint on glass in front of the scene to make a castle on a hill or whatever, and or you could do it in post, but it was still painted with paint and stuff. And I remember visiting Bruce one time at ILM, and they were working on Star Trek 3, and he said, "I think we can do matte paintings digitally." And that sounded crazy to me. He goes, "You don't need paint." I'm like, that sounded crazy. I hadn't seen Photoshop didn't really exist. Maybe it did, but nobody knew about it. He was one of the first 5 people to use it, so maybe he knew something I didn't. But what he was saying sounded crazy to me.
Right. Right.
Um,
But
which
here's a
is
huge insight, though. A huge insight is you're already starting to get this practical knowledge and a glimpse of the future. And like that is what the McDonald's School of Thought, like the McDonald's school training that you got through your practical use and applications is as you're dealing with the experts in this field and getting insight into how things are evolved. Like school cannot teach you that. There's just
right,
no way it can, right?
right,
And so you're getting these insights along with understanding the tools and the tricks of the trade of something you're deeply ingrainedly and passionate about.
mm-hmm,
That's a beautiful thing. And I think there is something to be said about that complete lost art of, because what you're describing to me is, in essence, kind of almost an apprenticeship as well, too.
oh yeah,
You're in the nitty gritty of things. Um,
absolutely,
and for it to be something that just doesn't happen as much anymore as I equate it
yeah,
to, I did pizza dough, right?
yeah,
I got an uni and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna make my pizza dough. Shit took me 6 months to make one halfway decent pizza dough, right?
right, right,
And it's just there's so much nuance and there's kind of magic that goes into it and the temperature and the
oh
your
sure,
house and the humidity and all these different things, and you just can't do it without doing you can't no without doing it.
right,
Bottom
yeah.
line.
Yeah, there's something about learning for, and apparently I didn't know this either, but dyslexics often look for mentors.
Tell me about your interpretation. 'Cause, like, I think me and you might have had this conversation in our intro call, but I had said this, maybe it was you or somebody else, but I said, you know what? I've never really had a mentor. Like, I've
Mm,
never actively reached out to a mentor. And
hmm.
actually, it was another guy who's like, well, you're thinking about that wrong because your entire life is filled with mentors.
Yeah, that's true.
It's whether you interpret it as that way or not,
Hmm.
right? My
Yeah,
mom is one. My dad is one.
right.
My CMO, where I worked and did all the Geico commercials, was one. They didn't.
Hmm.
We didn't physically have the "Can you be my mentor?" conversation,
Right.
and I think a lot of people interpret it that way. That like there needs to be some formal mentor relationship. But when you say mentor, what does that mean to you, and how do you look at mentors from your perspective and point of view?
Well, also, your mentor doesn't even need to be alive.
True.
So, right. Um, I consider Rod Serling a mentor. Um, there are people, yeah, because if you get deep enough into not just their work, but their life and their philosophy, and you can start to learn from them in a real way.
Yeah.
So I call them virtual mentors. But in terms of a real mentor, now a mentor doesn't have to actually be a positive force
Oh,
either,
100%.
right? You can learn from negative personalities too. Like, oh, I don't want to be that. Right, right. I don't want to do that. Right.
Mhm.
That's not a way to do that. So, in some ways, anybody can be a mentor. Um, my mentorship was a little bit more formal,
Yeah.
um, but not all of them were.
Yeah.
And sometimes people are mentors for just a little while. Like there was an editor who a friend of mine apprenticed with him, but I knew him a little bit because my mentor worked with him. So I would run into him, and he would say things sometimes that I would be thinking about. He said things that I still think about, and I only met him a handful of times, you
Right.
know,
Right.
um, and probably talked to him. At the most, maybe we had a 20-minute conversation all together. Once, but mostly he would just have these little bits about editing. He would say these things about editing, and I'm like, oh, that's really smart. And I would keep it, and I still think about that stuff.
Yeah,
So,
and that guy, right,
yeah,
probably never knew that he profoundly impacted you with those little comments as well, too.
yeah. I bet he doesn't even remember me. I bet he
Right,
doesn't, you know what I mean? For
right.
me, it was like he was a real film editor, so he had a kind of mystique,
Yeah,
right? I was just some kid, so
yeah. But
um,
this makes sense, like, and see what we're doing here? This is I love we've already had this beautiful conversation. This makes sense that mentor the dyslexia, but then also the main thing is, with the people are out there struggling with this concept of mentorship. But it really boils down to like, you are actually looking at every interaction that you're having at this point as a way to learn.
mhm,
And you're taking these snippets from, like you said, this guy probably doesn't even remember you, but he
yeah,
profoundly said some things that like impacted the way you think about editing. And I think there is something deeply important about that mentality that is definitely lost in this day and age.
yeah, I
Uh,
think that's true, and I think there, the when it comes to craftsmanship, there is a kind of um, what's the word I'm looking for? I think something's disappearing. The idea of craftsmanship is disappearing. And because we have a lot of shortcuts and a way of getting these things without the craftsmanship, right? Because you can buy pizza dough, people don't take the time to learn how to make pizza dough, right?
100%.
Right. And so then they don't appreciate, like, no, that dude just made the pizza dough. They don't appreciate the same way because they haven't been through the process, right?
Yep.
And so um, I think that there's something to be said for learning how things were done. Like this is what I mean when I talk to young film editors or younger film editors who all came up in the age of digital editing, nonlinear editing. They have a different philosophy about how you cut
Mhm.
than the people who grew up or learned how to physically cut.
Yeah.
And the difference is that 8 frame thing that George Lucas. So the thing is, when you deal with the frames themselves and you have to physically cut film, because you had to cut it. There was a little machine, you cut it like a little guillotine, and you would cut it, and then you'd have to glue it together. There was a physical activity there. Here's what that meant. You didn't want to do any more work than you had to do. So they had real solid philosophies about why you cut on this frame and not that one.
Yeah,
Because
there are actually like profound real consequences to a simple action.
right. Whereas what I notice with younger editors is they try stuff and they try stuff and they try stuff and they try stuff and then something works. Right.
And they can't explain why it works.
Right. They may have some
100%.
vague idea about why something works, but it's
Mhm.
different.
Yeah.
I don't hear the same kind of philosophy coming from them as I did this editor from when I was a kid.
And it's interesting that you say this because I was about to say this about we going back to the pizza dough analogy is to your point, you can go buy the pizza dough and
Hmm.
that person um doesn't understand the painstaking 6 months I went through to make a decent pizza dough.
Hmm.
But when I do ultimately perfect that, you're damn straight they're gonna be able to tell the difference between store-bought and then my homemade. Because
Yeah.
not only is it the ingredients are better, the process is better, there is something inherent about my love and effort and attention poured into it, right? You're
Yeah.
saying the same exact thing about editing, just in a
Yeah.
different way.
Yes. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think I think this concept is so important over the next couple of years. It's
Hmm.
so important because we think we're lazy now. We're about to get, I mean, dude, I don't like, you don't even really need to know much about C plus compilers or C plus coding to just know that the way to explain it is Opus 4.6, the new Claude version just came out.
Hmm.
And this would have taken a large engineering team, maybe years, uh, in a very short amount of time for 20,000, less than 20,000 or around $20,000. AI just made an entire C plus compiler by itself in one stream of work. Like that's the world we're heading to. And what we're talking about now is going to get completely lost in the sauce if we don't have more conversations like this.
I think that's 100% true. Yeah, I think that's true. Um, it'll be interesting to see. This is one of the things that has been really good for me. Having been wrong about so many things has been good for me.
Mm,
Having been wrong about what was going to happen with digital, having been wrong about what was going to happen with the digital matte painting and what digital was going to do for. I grew up in a photochemical age, right? And when I was going to ILM, I remember I saw the Enterprise. Uh, the Enterprise was in a room by itself, and Bruce might say, "Hey, here's the Enterprise," and it's like the real Enterprise from Star Trek. Like, you know, that's the coolest thing in the world. But so everything was solid and real and you could touch it and what's interesting about that that shift was hard for me because what do you mean it won't be touchable, won't be tangible? Not understanding that has been really helpful as we progress now. When people are rejecting new technology, I have seen enough new technology come around that I go, wait a minute. And all the same arguments are always made. So when we went from hand drawn to CG animation, same arguments. So it's always, the arguments are always the same, and the new technology never goes anywhere. So what I have learned is, how do I make friends with this new technology? Because it's not going anywhere. And the fact that other people are ignoring it only gives me an advantage.
100%.
It only
100%.
gives me an advantage. Be-
Before we get to that, because I
Mhm,
want to put a pin in that,
mhm.
I know we've just done such a disservice on your actual like a disservice on your storied career because you've done a
Okay.
lot of really cool things. And so, but I'm not again, I want to touch more on like maybe two more things in
Mhm.
chapter two as we're progressing.
Okay.
We've done a good job of visualizing you up to the point where you have the mentor. Now you're bouncing around. You're in these production studios. You're learning from doing. You're getting to go to Industrial Light and Magic. You're going to work with some of these top tier people. But then you also have a comics. You go down the comic route. You have the short film um, and you're starting to, like you said, you've learned storytelling from a very young age, and it's one of the things you're insanely passionate about. There's many different directions we can go.
Mhm.
I want to give you an opportunity to kind of choose your own adventure, whatever
Okay.
makes natural and sense to you. And what
Okay.
I'm looking for is choose your own adventure that come give me two really kind of like reflective, insightful learning lessons throughout this process. And then we'll get to chapter three.
Okay. So, when I was a kid, I would read comics, um, but I wasn't into comics.
Hmm.
I think as a dyslexic, they were easier to read,
Yeah.
and that's kind of why I read them. And some like my uncle would have like some Superman comics around, and I would read those or whatever. Um, but I wasn't into comics, and I had friends who were, but I just wasn't. And then I met a guy. We became very close friends. But when I met him, he was way into comics, and I was way into film, and we hit it off immediately. And there was a cross pollination. So he taught me a lot about comics, and I taught him a lot about movies. And at the time, what was happening in comic books was amazing. There was amazing work happening at that moment. Like it was the perfect moment. Um, uh, Frank Miller had just started doing Daredevil, which was
Yeah.
huge. John Byrne had just taken over the Fantastic Four, which was huge. Um, and then Bill Sienkiewicz, who was doing Moon Knight, and then later came on to the New Mutants, which was a X-Men sort of spin-off book,
Uh-huh.
where he was doing amazing. And none of the work was the same. Nobody, Walt Simonson started doing Thor, which was amazing, and none of the work looked the same or felt the same. And for me, it opened up a whole world of, because it was visual storytelling like film.
Right.
And I was going to make a film. It's funny. This was 1980 when I met him, because I was going to make a film. It's the first screenplay I ever wrote with a friend of mine, and it's 15 years old. And so my stepdad was going to drive us out to Eastern Washington, the other side of the mountains, to go shoot this movie. And Mount St. Helens blew, and there was
Wow.
ash all over everything. And my stepfather was like, "I'm not going over there," so we didn't make the movie.
Right.
But I remember my friend who I met. I had him doing storyboards because he was a comic book guy, and having him do storyboards. That's what got me into comics. Like, oh, it's the same. Oh, I see. And
Mm-hmm.
so I would read comics, a lot of it for the visual storytelling.
Mm.
Um, and then I became a fan of the work of the people, the people doing that work. Um, and that was really, that was, I got to where I really liked comics as a medium, and thought it felt a lot like film to me.
Mm.
It felt like a lot of the same. In fact, it's weird to me that more comic book writers aren't recruited to be screenwriters.
That
It's
doesn't
such a
make sense
similar
to me
job.
either. You're literally thinking about frames.
Yeah, it's such a similar job. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, none of the Marvel movies are written by people who wrote the comics, but they could be,
Yeah.
right? So it's really weird.
Yeah.
A few people have done the crossover, but not that many.
Hmm.
Frank Miller did it, but he writes terrible movies for some reason. I don't know why, but um, yeah, I just think they have some of the base skills, and I don't know why more people don't go after them. But so what happened was, a friend of mine wanted me to write a comic book he was going to draw or something. It was a short piece, and I wrote it, and he sold it. It was my first published piece,
Nice.
and I was like, oh. And I wrote another one, and that sold. And so I went, I guess this is easy. It wasn't easy. After that, it was so hard. But I thought, oh, this is a way for me to. Um, by then, I had moved to LA, and I was trying to make it in film, and it was a way for me to be a storyteller and to make money and see my stuff in print and all of that. But it got very difficult after those first two to do that. And so I would get occasional work. One of the reasons I've been to San Diego so much is because I went to con,
Yeah.
the Comic Con, every year for like 13 years,
All right.
trying to get work in comics. And I got virtually no work at all in comics. I got some. I got some, but not a lot. Um, and I would say there was a lot of politics when I did get something.
Mm.
I don't think I think I can name maybe one job I got because the person thought, "Hey, you'd be good at doing this thing." Other than that, the jobs I got were, I came along with the artist. They wanted to work with the artist, and I was just there.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. There was always some weird backdoor reason that I got to do it. And I loved it when I got to do it, and I wanted to do a lot more of it. But it. What I learned, what I learned was that what I was doing was working. An audience would respond to the work I was doing. Um, uh, yeah, I wish I could think of something else I learned from
No,
comics.
no,
Yeah,
that's totally
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
And but I think one of the things you already said it without saying it is uh it ended up being incredibly hard, right?
It was
And in
really
the
hard.
beginning, there was kind of a little shiny object in saying like, "Oh my gosh, this is the first time like somebody paid me for doing what I love."
Hmm.
And then you realize, well, that's not how the real world works. So take
Right.
me then through the you're going to LA. You thought you had something, and then it turned out to be really hard. So then what's next?
Well, when I got to LA, so that was 1986, June of '86. I got to LA. So one of the people I had worked with was a guy. We were just talking yesterday, as a matter of fact. Was a guy around my age, a little bit younger, who worked at one of these places with me as sort of a uh, a mentee with same as me. Anyway, he moved to LA. He's a special effects makeup artist. That was his thing. That's what he wanted to do. That's what he does now. And so he moved down and started working, and called and said, "Brian, it's the land of milk and honey. You got to come to LA." And so I went, and we had very different experiences.
Mhm.
And what I didn't understand was just how it's hard for everybody, don't get me wrong, but how closed things were for me because of what I looked like. I didn't
Yeah.
expect it.
Yeah.
And I was lucky because that was not a factor when I was learning and mentoring and all of that. I was still the same person, and I was the only black guy doing it around, but nobody, it
But you
wasn't,
were doing it.
but no, it wasn't a thing. It
Yeah.
wasn't a thing until I got to LA. There was one guy, I won't mention his name, but I was a huge fan of his work. And I had sent in a resume, and I went to his office, and they wouldn't even open the door for me. Like they talked to me through a crack in the door.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was taken aback by that experience. And I was often, almost always, the only person of color that I ever saw on a movie set when I worked on a movie or anything. And so what was interesting is I had these years of experience doing motion graphics. And when I would show my reel at an interview of all my stuff, nobody believed I had anything to do with it. And I would go home and I'd ask my roommate, Todd, who had done the same thing just a few months before I got there. And I'd say, "So when you show your reel, do people believe that you did it?" Because I would get the third degree. Well, how would you do that kind of a shot? And how would you do this? And how would you do that? And he'd say, "No, they just take what I say and believe what I say." That
Yeah.
was not my experience at all. Um, and so what I ended up doing actually was working in creature shops because I knew him. So so I ended up doing a lot of creature stuff because I knew him. I met other people. It's kind of almost the same thing with Bruce Walters, my mentor. Like I knew other people, so then I was in other shops, but I was still the only black person in any shop I was ever in.
Right.
There was nobody else in those spaces but me. I think that I don't know what it's like now, and I don't know what creature shops are like now, but that's the way it was then. Um,
One of the things I'm hearing though is that comes up time and time again is because of what you look like. There was this huge barrier here, but you also persevered with through relationship building and building skill sets
mhm,
with people that didn't look like you. So what
right.
is that like? That's a really interesting, uh, like, there's a little irony or something in there. There's a subject. There's an interesting thing going on there. Are there any thoughts there? Does that even spark a thought? Maybe not.
I, I don't know. I don't know if it was any different than what other people had gone through who looked like me before. I don't, you
No, I
know.
think I think I think it's more that the fact that like you still persisted to follow your passion and do the
Hmm.
things that you loved.
Hmm.
Because at the end of the day, you're still a human and you could cultivate relationships, and people
Right.
thought you were an interesting human being.
Hmm.
And so like that's what progressed you. And ironically enough, you have had been able to do really interesting in things in your career, and you didn't need the buy-in from the people cracking the door, right? Because
Right.
you were still able to do those. Any thoughts around more of that concept, I think, is what I'm thinking. Is it because you were good at cultivating relationships? Was it good? Do you think it is because you were good at storytelling? Do you think it was, charisma? What was it there that you were still able to persist in a situation where you shouldn't have and been able to? I think is my question.
Uh, I don't know if I know how to answer that question. Somebody else might have to answer it. Um, all I knew is this is all I ever wanted to do. That's all I knew. And I would also say, going back to the idea of resistance, it builds muscle.
Yeah,
So going to LA was not my first taste of resistance.
of
It was
course.
my first taste of resistance with my career
Right.
directly.
And something you were that passionate about, right?
Right.
Like
But
this is what you meant to
with
be.
with high school and all of that,
Yeah.
there was plenty of so
I think that could be the answer though. I think
yeah.
it's just reverting back to what you have said the whole time, which is I think a very good answer, which is that resistance continued to build that muscle. And this passion, man, it's like if you want to talk about any story about like we're gonna have to talk offline because I firmly believe in the concept of passion,
Hmm.
and your life story is about the effectiveness of passion. Like we gotta build a story around passion together. I think it would be beautiful
Hmm.
because I think it's incredibly moving and important, and it's a theme that is carried throughout this entire conversation.
Well, I heard somebody define the word passion one time,
Mm,
and it was a fascinating thing to hear.
give it to me.
So they said that passion means suffering. That's what it means. That's why you have the passion of the Christ. Passion means suffering.
Yes,
So what you're passionate about is the thing you don't mind suffering for.
yes, yes.
Right.
I That totally makes sense to me,
Yeah,
man.
doesn't it? It's like,
That
oh yeah,
totally makes
that
sense to
makes
me.
sense. That makes sense.
Yeah,
They are linked. The suffering and the passion are linked.
yeah,
I wouldn't have had to suffer if I had switched to doing something else.
yeah.
Right.
Interesting.
Right.
Right. Yeah,
Like, oh, that hurts. I don't like that. I'll do something else.
yeah,
Right. But I mean, and that still comes up. There's still people who are like, why don't you, because there's still struggles. So people are like, why don't you switch to this or switch to that? I'm like, you know, I'll be 61 years old this month. I'm not switching.
right.
Right. you know,
Listen,
you know,
listen, you know what? I've passioned enough in my life.
yeah,
No turning
yeah.
me back at this moment in
I'm
time.
not going to switch to something else.
Yeah.
you know,
So, okay, so we go through LA. We're in the 80s. Let's get to the 90s, 2010s, because I really want to take, my little man's waking up, but I still totally can do 10, 15 minutes. I want to
okay.
get to chapter 3, but let's start winding out
Okay.
chapter 2 in the sense of uh I'm assuming you leave LA because you're like, this is enough of this passion
Yeah.
building muscle. Let's
Yeah.
do something else. What does that all look like?
I was having a hard time doing what I wanted to do and moving up. It was a hard place to be. And a lot of the people I knew who were closer to doing the stuff that I wanted to do started to have some success. And I had this group of people that started to break up as people got more success. Some people went to New York because they got a television show, and anyway, things started to break up. And my car broke down. I didn't have any money, and I didn't have a way to make money without a car in Los Angeles. So so I came back home to Seattle, and I still wanted to do what I wanted to do. So I made my film Whiteface as a writing and directing sample. Um, and I was also writing screenplays when I was, writing screenplays and entering competitions, and I was doing all that stuff. And I was trying to get into the Disney Fellowship Program, which is a thing that I don't know if they still do it, but they would bring in some writers if you won that. They had a television thing, and they had a movie thing, a feature film thing. And if you got into one of those, then you would work with them for, I forget what it was, maybe it was a year. And then, you might get some assignments out of it and stuff, but they would sort of train you. And so I knew some people who had won that, and I came very close to winning it uh, one year for television and didn't win it, but it was interesting how I didn't win it. So, um, Uh, I think I did win, and then I blew it in my phone interview,
Mm,
um,
mm.
which was interesting. So, and I can say this because it's true. so, so, uh,
Please do.
yeah, I'll say this because it's true. It's like, yeah, because I told people at the time. So I don't want Disney to be like, "Eh," but this is what happened. So, um, one of the things they said in this Disney Fellowship thing was that they wanted different voices. They wanted diverse voices.
Right.
And I had had experiences on the phone. I had one experience where a woman started talking uh, badly about minorities because she didn't know what I looked like, right? She couldn't tell I was black on the phone.
Oh man.
So because they wanted minority voices, in my phone interview, I made it clear that I was a black writer because they wanted diversity. And a couple of times I brought it up. I brought it up as and maybe I wasn't as slick as I thought I was, but I tried to bring it up as naturally as I could.
Right.
You know, so she'd ask a question, I'd say, "Well, as a black writer, blah 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 blah." I
Right.
did that, I think, twice in the interview, and the second time I did it, this woman said to me, and she was angry, and she said, "You know, this isn't just for black people," which I never said it was or thought it was. I just
Right.
thought that was one of the things. And from then on out, she was hostile to me,
Uh,
and I didn't get the thing.
yeah.
And so I actually think I did. In fact, that spec script I wrote for that almost got me a job on the real show that I wrote that spec script for. so, so,
Crazy, man.
so that script did really well for me in a way, and then not in other ways. But I think
Right.
I just blew the phone interview. That's what the woman said to me. I don't know how they are now. That was a long time ago. You know, I'm not.
Dude, building muscle. I mean,
Yeah,
they're just it's literally building muscle every story that you say.
yeah.
Okay, so yet again, another muscle building exercise. Then what?
So I was doing that stuff. Um, I made my film Whiteface. Well, I started teaching. So, um, I've been writing screenplays at that point as an adult for about 10 years because I started as a teenager, but as an adult for about 10 years. And so, I started writing, or I started teaching. Somebody needed a screenwriting teacher, excuse me, and thought I could do it. So I did it, and it turned out I had a knack for it, which I didn't. I was just like, I didn't know. I was just trying to make money, just trying to pay the rent.
Right.
But I seemed to have a knack for it, and I kept doing it. Then I made Whiteface, and that did really well. It won Slam Dance and won a few awards and sold to HBO and all of that. So that was nice. And then, but you know, the sale, I thought it would change my career, and it didn't do much. It kind of put me on the map as a guy people knew, but it didn't do much else. In the meantime, I had entered the Disney Fellowship program, and they sent me for a feature, and they sent me a rejection, and it said to me that I should read a list of screenwriting books. They had this list of screenwriting books that I should read, and I had all those books and had been reading most of them for years. So and I thought to myself, you know, I could write one of these books. Like, have they read the books? Because I clearly, if you look at my work, it's clear that I know the books. And so I said I could write one of these books, and so I did. I did. So
Man.
my book, Invisible Ink, about story structure, one of the reasons I wrote it is because uh, I was trying to prove that I could do what I said I could do, and
Yeah.
that yeah, that there was a method to my madness, which in some ways has been great for me, and in other ways backfired for me because
Oh,
people will say, well, you're more of a teacher. So when they don't want to give me a job now, they'll say, well, we think of you as a teacher. It's like, yeah, but
interesting.
I you know,
Right.
I learned this stuff so I could do it, not so I could teach it. So I know how to do the stuff. That's how I wrote the book. But anyway, but the book is used in ironically in film schools
Which is the whole ironic part about the whole situation.
Using film programs and studios refer to it, and sometimes I will work with those studios. And I started working with Pixar in 2006,
Ah,
doing some work for them and helping them with story stuff occasionally, and lecturing with them.
well, talk to me a little bit about, and this is so again, it's full circle, hence why
Mhm.
we do this kind of the
Yeah.
conversation we have, which is a version of a bad mentor got
Hmm.
you and prompted you to write this Invisible Ink book.
Hmm.
And but yet again, you're here. You've proven yourself. You have a book that now is being used in film schools, but you're still building muscle in the sense that you're getting maybe resistance to the one thing that you're still trying and love
Right,
to do.
right. Yes, that's true.
And so like what are your thoughts around that? If you don't have any of that, that's fine. But like that's just wild to me that you can on one hand be very successful in what you do, but on the other hand still feel like it's just you're not fitting in. Like that's wild to me.
Well, I think that uh, the gatekeepers,
Mm,
it's rare that I've been asked to work on. There was one comic book company I've done some work for, and I won't get into their deal. But one day I was visiting, and they said, "Oh, we were thinking about you because we were thinking about doing a black horror line or something. So we were thinking about you." This is years ago, and I had a problem with that because this has always been my problem. There was actually a professor who said this, and he said because this is so what he was teaching like African American literature or something at some school, but he was really into Edgar Allan Poe, and he wanted to teach a course on Edgar Allan Poe. And he kept saying to the school, "I really want to teach this course. Edgar Allan Poe is my guy," and they kept saying no to him. And they said, "Look, you got hired to teach this African American, literature course." And he said, "It was then I realized that I wasn't a black professional. I was professionally black."
mm,
And sometimes what they do is they say, "Well, we need you to write the black thing. We don't need you to write the thing."
mm.
Right? And so if you don't fit into that category of there's a certain way that we see black writers and black stories. If you don't fit into that, it's a very difficult. You don't fill a niche. They're like, "Well, why do we need you?" And what's interesting to me is like they're forgetting that yeah, I'm a black guy and I have those experiences, but I also have every other human experience. Right, 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 right. I've been in love. I've had my heart broken. I have parents and I have relationships with them. I have all the other
Fears,
human
anxieties,
experiences.
depression. Literally, like I said before we came on this show, this is why I do it because it is the life experiences. Yeah, and yours, yes, are different, but it doesn't. We have, I would say, a large part of them are similar than every other human on this earth.
Right, exactly. Right. So it's like, well, no, but I could write about anything. That's just one of the things I can write about, right?
Yeah.
So that becomes a difficult thing to navigate. Um, and so for me, so I was writing, and again, I came along with the director, essentially, a person I've known a long time, and we were doing this feature for a big franchise. He was directing, and he brought me in as the writer. I felt some resistance when I was brought in. They seemed to not like anything I was doing. Um, I don't know why they dropped the project. I don't know if it was me. They eventually dropped the project. But we were doing this big feature film. Anyway, we found ourselves out of work, and we'd known each other for years and years and years. And we're like, do we even need these people anymore? The technology and everything is changing enough that maybe we don't need these gatekeepers at all. We've been helping other people make their movies at the highest levels. We they don't understand they need us, but we don't need them. right?
Right.
So then we just started a company because we're like, you know what, we want to get our stories out, and you know, it's great to help other people with theirs, but we have stuff that we'd like to see and things we think we have to contribute. So, you know, um, yeah.
And
So
that's how chapter three kind of really evolved into what you're building now, right?
what I'm building now, yeah. You know, and yeah, and you know, Jesse and Jesse. I used to work with Jesse at the creative agency we had, and he'd taken my class a bunch of times, and then ended up bringing me in. And Jesse got into AI really early on, and when nobody was talking about it, he's like, "This is
Right.
going to be a big thing." And he's a perceptive dude. So I was like, he's a pretty perceptive guy. Also, I had all those experiences, not believing that digital was going to take over, not believing that, like, you know, that hand drawn animation was going to get replaced, not believing, like, I had enough experience by then to go. Also, I had a Walt Disney story in my head, um, that when television arrived on the scene, the movies were very threatened by television.
Mm,
Before television, people went to the movies like 3 times a week.
right.
So that was essentially TV, right? But they had to pay to go to the movies. Once they bought a TV, TV was free. There was no cable or streaming. TV was free. So the movie industry was frightened out of their mind. So that's when they started going to widescreen stuff, stuff you couldn't get. They started 3D in the 50s. They started trying to give you an experience you couldn't get at home because they were fighting television. And I mean, they were so afraid of television that some studios wouldn't let you mention television in a movie. You couldn't mention a television.
Right. Right.
People in the movie couldn't have a TV or own a TV,
Yeah.
right? So they were just. But Walt Disney was the first guy, first movie uh, studio head that said, "Can't we make television?"
Mm,
And he started making TV. And one of the first things he did with television is he had a show called Disneyland or something. Disneyland wasn't open yet. And nobody really quite understood the idea of Disneyland. There had never been anything quite like it. So he used that show to sell the idea of Disneyland to
yeah.
the public.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah. And then he started doing other things like Zorro, which was a big hit for them. But he was the first person to go, "Can't we make television?" And the way that I've heard it put is, um, I heard an executive say this one time about the train business. He goes, the train, they were the billionaires of their time, the people who owned the railroads, right? They had all the money, the railroad guys.
Yeah.
But when planes came, they saw the planes as competition. And the way I've heard it explained is they thought they were in the train business, but they were in the transportation business.
Yeah.
They could have been in the plane business, right? And so knowing all of those things, I'm like, well, wait a minute. What what can AI do for me? Right? What can it do for me? Forget, it's like, what business am I in? Right? What business am I in? I love directing actors. I love it. I love being on a set. I love it. People aren't letting me do that. Right? So, right?
Right.
So, right? So, is there another way to tell my stories? Yeah,
Yeah.
there is. And I can cut out the middleman and I don't have to worry about the budget. And if I have an idea that's as big as Star Wars or Indiana Jones, I can do it now.
Yes.
Right? And so I see it as a kind of freedom. Um, you can cut out the gatekeepers. And I don't know if a lot of artists are looking at it that way. I'm bringing all of the things I know about the craft to the table. So is my partner because he worked in movies a long time, worked at Lucas, worked at Pixar, worked in movies a long time, bringing all the practical knowledge he has, bringing as much human creativity and artistry to the process, but using AI as a production tool.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and so that's
The
how,
ultimate production tool.
yeah. And, you know, it's like a lot of artists are against it and whatever, but, you know, a lot of those people are working. And, you know, again, I started trying to break in as a writer director in 1986, and now it's 2026.
Right.
I don't have, you know, that many more years to, you know what I mean? So for me, it's like, you know what? Fine. I'm going to use everything I learned doing this, and I'm going to show you what I can do.
You,
Just the same way I wrote my book, right?
yeah, and you know, you just said like, and it's been beautiful story to get here, but it's really profound and it's an insight. It wouldn't hold the same gravity if we didn't have the conversation, but it is the embracing the technology as an opportunity and not fear.
Yeah.
But you hear people toss around that about like don't be afraid of AI, but it has such a different meaning for you than it
Hmm.
does for most, which makes it even more exciting for you because it is really the evisceration of gatekeepers.
Right.
And if you can get that, which has been a plague throughout your entire life, and really just bring your talent to the front of the table and to the forefront and to share with people, like that's a message I can get behind, man. And I think it's a message that many humans can get behind. Uh, and it's a beautiful thing of this world of abundance that we can create through these new technologies.
Yeah, I
I
think so. You know, yeah. And also, there's an interesting thing, and this is something I said way before AI, is to tell my students this all the time. Because a lot of times, one of the things that people talk about is the environmental impact of AI. And I'm not saying that's not a real thing.
yeah.
But a lot of people complaining about it are complaining about it on their phones, which also have some problematic, right? Right.
Turns
So,
rivers yellow in China and
you know
kills
what
a
I
lot
mean?
of people.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
right? There is always an element of destruction when you're creating. That's
Oh,
just true,
beautiful.
right? There always is. And so, what I used to tell my students is if you're going to write a screenplay, you are going to kill a tree. So, that screenplay has to be worth a tree. You have to put something of equal value into the world because it's a responsibility to be a storyteller. So yeah, there's going to be some environmental impact. I hope to put something out that is valuable enough to compensate for that in some way.
That is beautiful. That is a beautiful insight. And I totally agree. And it goes back to the same thing of that is just a click level deeper. And one of the many things that I've got through this conversation is that insight right there comes from you just thinking deeper about things, trying to understand how it works. What are the actual impacts of what I am doing? And that couldn't have come through uh, that building of muscle and that constant resistance throughout this story that you've told us. Let's do this. By the way, we've been talking for 2 hours and it's been
Okay.
beautiful. It's
Oh,
been
good.
fantastic.
Good.
Um, Tell me, and because I still want to give you a chance to talk, company name, your elevator pitch, what you're excited about right now,
Hmm.
what the next 3 to 6 months look like. I'll ask you one question that I ask every guest. I'll give you my final comments and we'll wind it down and call it a day.
Okay.
So, your elevator pitch, 2 minutes or less, you and your buddy. What are you building? Why? And you kind of alluded it to it, but like in more in a concise manner.
We see storytelling as a responsibility.
Mm,
Uh, being good storytellers is a responsibility. I believe that people tell stories as a means of survival. I've written about that. I think that's the only reason we tell stories. And if you're not giving people survival strategies, you're probably telling poor stories.
mm,
It is, there's never been a culture on the planet that didn't tell stories. So that's one of the things that makes me think it's imperative to our survival. Stories are human, which is our tagline. So even though we're using technology, we're always remembering that stories are human, and that's who we're serving. And also, how much talent and skill from people can we incorporate into this? We don't want to just rely on the AI. The AI fills the gaps, but we have plenty of people who are designing, who are designing the shots. We're trying to get, we're using all the skills that we have. So we want it to be as human as possible. So
Yeah.
stories are human is our thing.
Yeah.
That's our compass.
Love it.
A lot of times it's described as an AI production company, but really, whatever the technology is, and if it helps us tell our stories, we will use it. So it's not just AI because you can get locked, right? You can get locked into we're
Yeah.
AI, and if something else comes along, but we're AI. No, whatever we can use to tell our stories, right? Also, always making sure that we're telling stories that are responsible and that help people survive in some way.
Yeah, and it's a
Um,
fundamental part of a human. I actually started reading your book because I knew you were coming on, and you talk about this in the beginning, right? About just how one of the things that sets humans apart is because we can tell stories, and I firmly believe in that just concept in general too. Uh, what what are you working on now? What does the future look like? Are you like are you working towards a motion picture? Are you making a TV show? Do you got the YouTube channel? What's going on? Are
right
you
now,
doing
we are
consulting?
we are making our proof of concept short film.
Nice.
Two reasons. One is we have this crew. We got to get them in unison. We got to figure out what the pipeline's like. There's, very few people have done what we're doing
Yeah.
right at this point. Right, we're at the beginning of it's like being in the silent movie days. How do you
Yeah.
do this? Right.
Yeah.
So we're figuring out how to do it, and a short film is going to help us do that. I think.
Yeah. Yep.
And so that's what we're doing. We have a partnership with Runway, who does a lot of this
Yep.
generative AI stuff. They've been great with us, and so helping us solve problems and get more control, like consistency over character. Anyway, they've been fantastic partners, and so that's been great. So once we do that, that is a 7-minute short. Then we'll do a 30-minute, and then we'll go out and try to get the funding for a feature. But we want to
Beautiful.
be able to show people we can do a feature. Look, we've done these other things, right? We have high hopes for the short. Um, I hope we do well in festivals and all of that. And I've done that before, so that's not territory I'm unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
So hopefully we can rack up a couple of awards and do things that way and get some attention and do the 30-minute and then, like I say, go out for the feature. So that's the plan.
That's
Uh,
awesome, man. And just the models that are coming out, like, dude, um the new Kling model is just absurd, right?
Everything, it's amazing. Like,
Everything that is coming out is just mind blowing.
yeah, when we started this, it's been a few months now, but things changed so much. Like, oh, we couldn't do that when we started, but now we can do this, and now we can do that. So we're really trying to do something. We're trying to hit a home run with this movie. So a lot of people thought we should move faster, but it's more important for me to, and it's true, you can make something very quick now, but we're not trying to make something quick. We're trying to make something great,
Yes.
right? Because that's going to be the difference, right? Yeah, like, oh, that was great. We don't want people to think about AI when they're watching it. We don't want them to consider it. That's not what we're doing here. This is not about showing off the tool. This is about the tool should disappear, and the story should be the only thing that remains, right?
Beautiful.
So we want the tool to disappear. So we're working on making that possible. Uh, yeah, Chuck Jones said when you do something, it's like I think it's 10% love and 90% work, and when you're done, only the love should show.
Oh, I like that a lot. That's a
Yeah,
beautiful one.
yeah,
All right, man. So this has been a journey and a beautiful one at that. Next 3 to 6 months, I'll ask my last question and then I'll
okay.
give you my closing thoughts and we'll call it a day. So what next 3 to 6 months, what are you most excited about or anything you can divulge?
Um, well, depending on when it comes out. So I have, I've been doing some graphic novels. Land of the Dead is one. Old Souls is one. Land of the Dead is about storytelling, though, specifically. But I wrote a graphic memoir for this company, and it anyway. It's taken a long time. I turned it in 2020, so I hope that it'll be out soon. I would love people to see that. I'm really proud of the work I did in that book. So I can't wait for people to see that. But I don't know if that'll be out in the next 6 months. Maybe in the next year. I hope. Um, but I hope to have a film in the next 6 months that that everybody can see.
And
Uh, yeah.
if anybody wants to find you, your company, where should they go? Should they find you on LinkedIn, Twitter, or just go to your website?
They can find me on LinkedIn. I'm not hard to find on LinkedIn, and then I forget what I call what's my Instagram. It's Right Invisible Ink. That's right. That's
Okay.
what.
Right, Invisible Ink on
Yeah,
Instagram.
on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram, and then you can find Story First Studios. You know what? It's Story. Let's see. I forget which. I should know this.
That's
Oh
okay.
yeah, it's Story First dot Story. So that's the
Story first dot story. There's a lot of stories in there, and
yeah,
it's gonna make an impact. Story first dot story.
yeah, yeah.
Perfect. So, man, this has been so much fun. I knew we were going to have a really cool conversation, and you just said some really insightful, meaningful, profound things. Before I get to my kind of final comments, um, last question I ask every guest to come on. If someone were to ask you what it was like to be on the Mikey G podcast experience, what would you say?
It was great. It was a great conversation. It was just like talking to a friend, and it was a great conversation. It was,
Thanks, man.
yeah, um, a little too much about me. That's
I told you. I told you it was going to be a lot about you.
but other than that, I enjoyed it a lot, man.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you having me on, and I hope that people enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, and that goes into mine, and I think I think the thing that stood out to me the most was, um, you had to build a lot of muscle, man, and but you were the way you portrayed your story and your human story. You were never curmudgeony about it or super negative. Like you
Mhm.
can tell, and you talked about this a couple times as like the glass half full mentality, and you have to think about, well, there is still opportunity out there, and I just commend you for all of the times and the different adversities and muscle building you had to go through to still have that mindset. That is like, these are the nuanced types of conversations that people need to hear, because that is what builds character. That's what builds resilient, beautiful human beings like yourself. Uh, and you've done it through just persistency, and you've found ways to cope with it in different ways, which is this passion, this love, this constant pursuit of learning. And then it's brought you to different perspectives. That the story about the Muppets and being passionate, maybe not about Muppet making, but an aspect of that, was such a beautiful, profound insight. And then we go through this whole journey, and one of the things is the gating your entire life. And 40 years. We're talking about 40 years, right? You said
Yeah,
that. Since the
yeah,
80s, 40 years.
yeah.
There are not many people, and you're talking about billions of people on this planet.
Right.
There are not many people that would persist for 40 years for something, and then have a new technology come by, and then still say, well, holy shit, this is my chance to get rid of the token gators and do what I've always been loving and doing and done my entire life, just to tell a human story. And that defines and redefines what passion really means. And I think people need to hear simple like, it's not like we dropped like these crazy, crazy bombs of like things that people haven't heard, but your angle of your unique story, I think this is how you get richness.
Hmm.
And you gave depth and richness to age old principles that people need to hear more than ever. And you're just another proof point as to why I love doing this. We're not trying to be the most flashy. We're not trying to like give you this nugget of knowledge that's going to change your life forever. We're trying to show you nuance. We're trying to show you the real struggles that people have, and how that adds value. And I think richness is what, and depth and richness is what we're going to go with, because that's what you provided today. And you gave me over 2 hours of your time, man, and that is not lost on me. And I just appreciate you with every cell of my body. See how I brought that back?
Thank you, Mikey. It was really great.
Absolutely.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
me.
man. And with that being said, people, Brian and Mikey G had a beautiful conversation about life, love, all of the emotions you have, storytelling, and what the future is to bring. I'm sure we're going to bring you on back on, have more conversations about creativity, and we can get into the nitty gritty. But you did a beautiful job talking about your story. We thank you all. Mikey G and